All right, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Before I get started, if somebody can just maybe put a thumbs up, or Sarah, if you can let me know that my audio is okay and everyone can hear.
It's good.
Okay, wonderful. Just to keep track of time, wanted to welcome everybody to the Parent and Family Pre-Departure Orientation. Just a few housekeeping items. If you don't mind, please make sure that your microphones are off and that your cameras are also off. We will leave time at the end to ask any questions. Feel free to ask any questions within the chat. The issues happen when we have maybe 145 people, video are all turned on at the same time, and so we lose connectivity with that. So just a quick last minute housekeeping notice. Also, please know that this is being recorded and this will be sent out to students. So if you are not interested in having your face on this recording, feel free to turn your video off. So this is our summer and fall parent and family pre-departure orientation for students, obviously, who are departing. We have our first group who will be leaving, I think, right after graduation and into the summer, and some students who are going to spend an entire fall or even longer semester abroad. So thank you for being here. So my name is Carolina Robinson. I am the Director of Education Abroad here at the University of Alabama. You will hear from my colleague, Chad Berry. He is the Associate Director of International Health, Safety, and Risk Management. We are pretty lucky to have a full-time international risk manager on our campus, so not many campuses can claim that, so we're very lucky to have that position. We also have Sarah Kidwell. She's Assistant Director of Study Abroad, and you will see that she is managing some of the online chat. We also have potentially some of our advisors here, including Tristan, Grammer, Eve Machado, Samantha Young. We also have Grant Baggett and Kelsey Guy may be popping in and out and through the chat. So this is our small but mighty Education Abroad office team. So on today's agenda, we're going to have a little bit of an overview of study abroad and what that looks like specifically at the University of Alabama. We'll spend a considerable amount of time talking about health and safety and making sure that you guys are aware of what we have already told your students. We will hit a few things about academics, some kind of important high-level stuff, talk about planning logistics. We'll talk about culture shock and identity, and then kind of getting involved with the Education Abroad office. So I like to start off with this slide because it's important to know, where students are coming to us interested in studying abroad and what kind of is their motivation and why those students are particularly studying abroad. Because students want to do different things to meet their different needs. We obviously have students who want to become more of a global citizen. We have some students who want to be immersed in a new culture, whether they're learning a foreign language, and so they're actually looking for locations where there's not a lot of American students. We have students come back and let us know that their study abroad experience has enhanced their employability, because when they can articulate what they have learned from an international experience on that future job interview or that internship interview, it really does make them stand out from doing an experience like this. Obviously, we have students who just want to study abroad because they want to experience the world. And just last summer, 40% of our students, that was almost about 350 students, had said that they had never left the United States before. And finally, we have students who study abroad because you're earning academic credit. That's the focus of this. We want students to have this experience and to take an opportunity to take their classes abroad, but it also will meet all of the requirements that will apply to here to their UA degree, and it doesn't kind of sidetrack them from completing their degree in a timely fashion. So there are a bunch of different support systems around the student. And so we talk to students about this during Study Abroad 101. And so this is a slide that we share with them so that everybody understands kind of their role and really where they can kind of function. So the student's responsibility when they're wanting to study abroad is to really research programs. We will never make a choice about a study abroad program for them, but they let us know some of their goals and hopes and dreams and maybe some of their courses that they're interested in. And we kind of are advising them on programs that they want to do, but they have to also dig and do some research as well. Make sure that they are maintaining their GPAs and maintaining everything that is required for them to gain access into that study abroad program. And then really as the family member, we understand that these students have support systems behind them who are really encouraging them to step out of their comfort zone and motivating them to have this international experience. We have an academic advisor. They are listed on the bottom right. And the academic advisor here on campus is that advisor that's helping them identify courses that they need to meet their academic plan here. That academic advisor isn't the person that's going to say, hey, you need to go to this university and take this particular course. They're saying for marketing majors, you need to have these particular courses. So let's get with us, the Education Abroad office, who could let us know where we can find these equivalents here at UA. So what we do is we take the plan from the student and the academic advisor, and we find a program where they could fulfill those academic needs, but also all of the other hopes and dreams that they want. Do they want to live with a homestay? Do they want to be in a location that's either hot or cold with a lot of Americans or not? Do they need to fit a certain price range or a certain calendar? So that's kind of where we work with the Education Abroad office. And so all of these particular roles are here to support a particular student to go abroad. So I think as parents, and you guys have a really very important role to provide a family support, whether you are a parent or you're an older sister or an uncle or aunt. The family really does provide support for the student. So encourage your students to do some research about their destination, just even outside of the research that we are offering them about the particular program. Let them dive deep into learning about the program and have some responsible planning, thinking about packing, thinking about budgets, right? Thinking about what to particularly spend abroad to make sure that the students are making their own decisions, but they're kind of guided decisions. Just know that during the trip, they're going to need you as well, but sometimes the check-in happens not regularly. You may not hear from them after they fly in on a long trip and they're just trying to connect that cell phone service in this particular country. So it might not be an immediate check-in. So don't freak out if you're not hearing from them from every day, but you do want to be available to listen. Study abroad can be a stressful thing, and it is actually a stressful thing. No matter how happy or excited somebody is, they're still going into a plane, maybe the first time without you all as a family, or arriving in a country that sounds different because it's a language that's not spoken. It just looks different. Food is different. So be there to listen and to discuss their transition and be empathetic. We'll talk about homesickness and culture adjustment a little bit later, but it is to be expected. And then understand that students may actually have a reverse culture shock upon return to the entry. They might have spent 10, 12 weeks, 3-4 months in Italy. Now they come back to the United States, and it's going to take them some adjustment to kind of get back into their routine here. So really just support, empathy, a little nudge about having their own decisions and being prepared, being proactive about their planning is really a big part of your role in this process. So I'm going to hand it over to Chad Berry to talk about health and safety.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see so many parents here and family members here in support of your students preparing to study abroad. We are very excited for them, and we think that study abroad is a great thing and potentially a life-changing thing. We hear a lot of stories from students about how their study abroad experience changed their life in a major way, and Carolina shared a little bit about that first slide or two about why studying abroad. But of course, we want them to be safe while they're doing so and come back safe and sound. And so the next several slides, I'll be talking about health and safety matters. So go to the next, yeah. Like I said, the study abroad experience can be very transformative, but safety is our priority. And to that end, we take a variety of steps, both pre-trip, before the trip, and also during the trip. So a few of those things we do for students, we offer the pre-departure orientation, and all students who go abroad as a UA student are required to attend one of our pre-departure orientations. And I'll talk more about what's covered in that in a few minutes. And kind of the purpose of the pre-departure orientation is both to inform students, here's information about insurance, here's information about our crisis response procedure, but also equip them with some skills and some ideas of things they can do to stay safe as well. Along with the pre-trip, part of the process, also registering. So all of our students who study abroad, of course, have to register their travel so that we know, where they're going and when they're going to be there. And so that, again, allows us to support them while they're there abroad. They're also registered in our international insurance. So every student going abroad as a UA student for a UA purpose is registered in our international insurance. We also, if they're going on a UA faculty-led program, we registered them in STEP, which is a State Department program. It stands for Smart Travelers Enrollment Program. And that alerts the U.S. Embassy in that location of their presence. If there's anything they need to know, then they can get that information out there to them. And then faculty-led. So we also talk about with our faculty, they all have to attend a risk management training. So we prepare our faculty and then help them think of different contingency plans for a variety of scenarios. The faculty also are offering program-specific meetings, orientations. So all the students going on that particular program, they will have meetings before they go as well about what they'll experience and what they'll be doing. So those are just a few things that we do before a trip happens to hopefully prepare your students for staying safe abroad. And then during the trip, we take both a proactive and reactive approach in terms of health and safety. So by proactive, I mean, if there's something that we hear about maybe happening or seems likely to happen, then it could be something like maybe there is a weather event that seems like it's about to impact a lot of our students in a certain location, or maybe there's a big protest scheduled in some city where we have students. If we hear about those things beforehand, we are monitoring things constantly. So then we would push that information out to our students in those locations so they can be prepared and take the steps they need to stay safe. But of course, we can't always predict everything that will happen. So some of our efforts in terms of student safety are inevitably reactive as well. So things happen, whether that's a medical issue that a student's experiencing, or whether it's something unexpected that happens in the country. Again, maybe it's a natural disaster, or maybe it's some other kind of event that was not foreseen. Then we will, of course, respond accordingly, and depending on the type of situation it is. And I'm going to talk more about our crisis response and how we kind of tailor that based on what the situation is and how many students might be impacted by that. So those are just a few things, but just know again that our number one priority is for your students' safety. All right, so I mentioned pre-departure orientation, and just to go over that briefly, it is required again for all of our study abroad students. And these are offered, I think we did 8 of these in the spring semester to prepare students who are going abroad this summer and fall. So they have plenty of options to choose from. And that orientation covers a wide variety of topics, but this health and safety portion it's really about half or a little more than half of that orientation, because again, that is such a high priority, and we want the students to know ways that they can stay safe, We want them to be informed about our insurance coverage and how they can use that while abroad, and also our crisis and emergency response procedures. Some other topics we cover, we talk about culture and culture shock. That's a very natural thing. And so we talk about maybe how to deal with that. We talk a little bit about academics and planning and logistics. And to some degree, we'll touch on all these topics again today in this parent and family orientation as well. Also, during that orientation, we give them a copy of our student handbook. And it looks like this. I don't know, maybe you can't see it. It's blurred out. Anyway, it's the student handbook. It's about 54 pages. So it's pretty hefty handbook that goes into greater detail about a lot of the topics that we covered in orientation. And, tell them they always can refer back to that as well while they're abroad. One of the things we talk to them about is their emergency action plan. So there's a page in that handbook that has some blanks for them to fill out. We tell them to do the research before they go and ask questions like, what's the local 911 equivalent? What's the nearest police station? Where's the nearest U.S. embassy? It's a pretty long list of questions that they can fill in. And we've asked them to do that before they go abroad. So that is one kind of piece that they could already have ready in case of an emergency. So that's just one thing we talk about in the pre-departure orientation. And as I mentioned on the last slide, all of our faculty, they are required to attend our faculty risk management training. We just had those last week for our faculty-led program directors who take students abroad. So hopefully they're prepared to work with your students as well. All right, so most of the next few slides really are the exact same slides, or at least very similar slides to the ones that we share with your students. And so we always start off with this one, and it does sound a little scary, but we want to kind of get their attention just to make sure they're aware of what's going on out there in the world. But that is that there is this Department of State has been issuing a worldwide caution for several years now. This is nothing new, but it is something that they've been issuing for a number of years now. And that states that there is a continuing threat of terrorist actions, political upheaval, and violence against U.S. citizens and interests abroad. And as we tell the students, the likelihood of something happening in their particular location like this is pretty low. It's probably not going to happen. But if something did happen, then the risk could be significant. So we want them to know about this and be aware. And some steps that they can take to mitigate, against this kind of risk would be exercising vigilance in highly populated tourist areas, keeping your eyes and your ears open. Don't be immersed in your phone and kind of, lost on your phone and not paying attention to what's going on around you. Monitoring the media, following instructions of the local authorities, staying in touch with all of you, registering in STEP. So again, Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, it's the State Department program. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. And then have that emergency action plan ready. And again, I just referenced that in the handbook, but again, we talked to them about that plan during orientation. And we asked them to do their kind of one piece of homework they have for us in terms of before they go abroad to fill out the blanks in that page. We also talked to them about our emergency protocol, our emergency communication protocol. So if we here in Tuscaloosa were to hear something that has happened abroad that could impact our students, and again, that could be a natural disaster, it could be a terrorist attack, it could be any number of things. There's basically 3 steps that we would initially take to get in touch with all of our students. So the first thing we would do is send out an email to their UA Crimson email account. And that email would say something like, hello, we have heard this event has happened, and we'll give some details about it. And then we'll give some details about some advice that we're getting in terms of what steps people should take to stay safe. And then we will ask for a response and say, please respond to this, let us know you're okay, or if you need help. And we tell the students if they get that kind of email, as soon as they're able to just respond. It can be real quick. They don't have to go in detail. They can just say, I'm fine. Or of course, if they need help, they can let us know that as well. And then that's a way that we can account for our students abroad. A second way that we would get some information out would be through our Discord group. So Discord, if you're not familiar with it, it's kind of like Slack. It's kind of like a group messaging system. And so a lot of our students use it, and we've established a Discord group on Bama Study Abroad. And we can send out messages through that, and it'll again share the information about the event, and then ask people to either like the message or respond to the message to let us know they're okay. And then a third way that we might communicate with them is through the International SOS Assistance app. So International SOS is our international assistance partner with UA, and they provide a lot of resources. I'm going to talk more about the app here in a second, but we can send out notifications to the app. And again, that notification can have some information, and then it'll just ask them to click a button, basically, I'm okay or I need help, and then we would respond accordingly. So that's our emergency communication protocol. Again, kind of one of three things or those three things that we usually do in some kind of event that might affect a lot of students. Next, kind of continue on the crisis response, kind of our protocols here. So first of all, just to briefly mention, there is this idea of what is a real emergency and what's really just a perceived emergency. And that's not to downplay any issues that students may be experiencing, but things like maybe somebody lost their key, maybe they lost their student ID, something like that. Obviously, it's a situation that has to be dealt with in a timely manner, but it may not be like a full-on emergency. But of course, we would still help students with that. But a real emergency could be things. It could be a personal issue, a medical issue. So our response will be tailored to several factors, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of response plan, but it is kind of tailored to, is this crisis affect one student, or does it affect a group of students or a whole country of students? All the students we have in a particular country, maybe. And our response would vary based on that. So again, types of crisis could be individual medical crisis of some sort, could be a natural disaster, could be a terrorist attack, could be a pandemic that we experienced recently, in the last few years. So those are different types of crises, and our response would vary based on the type. And then, of course, also could vary based on the type of program as well. So we have several types of programs. We have UA faculty-led programs, and then we have third-party programs, of which would include affiliates, exchange, non-affiliate, direct enroll, et cetera. So depending on the type of program, our involvement and our response might vary a little bit as well. If it's a UA faculty-led program led by UA professors, taking groups of UA students, teaching UA courses, then we're going to be very, very much involved, hands-on, kind of from beginning to end of whatever the crisis may be. Now, the faculty member themselves, they're going to be the one on the ground with the students. So they're going to probably be the one that's most involved with the crisis, but we will be very, much in communication with that faculty member and with the students as well in that kind of situation. If it's a third-party program, so one of our affiliates or exchange partners, for example, we'll be involved as much as we need to be involved. We definitely will be involved. So we'll be sending out information to our students, maybe experiencing things on the third-party programs. But since it is a program run by another institution, then it very well might be that they take the lead in terms of the initial ongoing crisis response with the students. And we were there to support and supplement any of the kind of advice and offer any of the impacts here at UA that might be in play there for that student. So again, our response could vary based on the type of program as well. In general, our crisis response procedure follows these five steps. Number one, of course, is ensuring safety. So depending on the situation, the number one goal is just get the student to a place of safety or into a safe situation, whatever that may be. Number two would be obtaining information and getting the details, the when, where, what, who, all of those kinds of details. Three would be alert stakeholders, and stakeholders could be obviously people in the program. It could be other people here at UA. So often if something happens abroad that makes the news, I will get a phone call from maybe our strategic communications office or even the president's office here at UA, and they will ask, do we have any students there? And so I'll alert them. They're part of the stakeholders here. Obviously, you are a stakeholder. So kind of coordinating that communication, coordinating support again, whether that's connecting with our insurance, and our international SOS travel assistance, and where's the recommended hospital, where's the recommended hotel that the student could get to. Support here at UA in terms of maybe it's mental health support, maybe it's support of faculty academic support, could be a variety of different things. And then of course it's maintaining communication. A lot of these things of course are happening simultaneously. But we have our procedure and plan we work through, and then it's kind of keeping everybody updated as the situation progresses. In terms of that communication, people that might be involved with communication and how that communicated. So obviously, if it's a faculty-led program, the faculty member will be very much involved. They're kind of our hands and feet, our eyes on the ground with the students. So there'll be a lot of communication with and from and to them. If it's a third-party program, then obviously our third-party contacts will be very involved. Also might include insurance company here in the third-party context. They probably would be involved in many cases. There'll be lots of emails being sent. Obviously phone calls as well can be sent. Text messages sometimes are sent. International SOS app notifications, talked about that. The Discord group, I've talked about that. So lots of different ways to communicate now, of course. And so we try to avail ourselves of all those. All right, emergency contact numbers. So these are numbers we do share with your students. There's a variety of numbers here. So number one, again, International SOS as our 24/7 international assistance partner. And they are available at that number. That's the US-based headquarters. But we also tell students, download the International SOS Assistance app and call International SOS through the app, because that would put them in contact with the nearest International SOS Assistance Center to them. And they have locations all over the world. So that is one emergency contact number they should have. Also here at UA, of course, our Education Abroad office, we are open all summer, Monday through Friday during those hours. And, we can be called and contacted here. If it's after business hours, then students can call the UA Police Department, and then they have a protocol of who to follow up with, and probably myself or Carolina Robinson. And we do share our cell phone numbers with the students if they need them in case of an emergency. And we are on WhatsApp as well. And then last but certainly not least would be the local emergency numbers. And again, probably not 911 as it is here in the US, but what is that equivalent in the location or locations where they're going? We tell the students just on those numbers, we tell the students, obviously program those numbers into your phone, but also keep a hard copy of those numbers, print them off. In case you were to lose your phone, for example, you'd still have access to those numbers. Okay, so the next few slides we'll be talking about just a couple of issues that are obviously have made news in our world in recent years and months and continue to do so. COVID-19 is a big one, obviously, for the last 2 years have been dealing with, and is still out there and still impacting travel in a variety of ways. Certainly things have calmed down, thankfully. And a lot of the restrictions are beginning to kind of fall and be lifted, but it does still impact travel in some places more than others. I'm gonna talk more about that in a second, but we consult the CDC, Department of State, International SOS, others as we make decisions, kind of monitoring the COVID situation around the world. We have a link, there's a link there with some FAQs that we try to keep updated on a pretty regular basis. And then in their study abroad application, they signed 2 documents. One is just a COVID-19 informational document, and then one's a travel acknowledgement. And they always can go back and read those in their application if they want to. Next slide. All right, so one thing we do talk about is the vaccines and boosters. So vaccines are still strongly recommended for going abroad. And there's lots of reasons for this. And one reason is that there actually are still some study abroad providers, institutions abroad, and locations even that do require proof of vaccination to participate. Again, a lot of these requirements are being dropped, but not all of them. And it just depends on where you're going, what program you're going on. So we tell students, do your research and be very clear about what the requirements are for you to go to that location to participate on that program. Because again, there could be some kind of vaccination related requirement to that. In terms of proof of vaccine, if that is required, then that CDC vaccination card, that white card is sort of the starting point for any proof that is required. It might be that you upload a picture or a copy of that card to some kind of online portal or to an app, and that issues you some kind of digital pass, but that white card is the starting point for all that. This does bring up the point that we try to emphasize to students, but do not fabricate COVID-19 vaccination cards. That could be breaking the law, which can result in major fines or imprisonment in some countries, and we certainly don't want that to happen. And then boosters, so kind of related to the vaccination requirement. If some countries or institutions may require, their definition of fully vaccinated may be you have to have had a dose of the vaccine within a certain period of time before your entry. So again, we tell students, do the research, figure out what the requirements are for where you're going, and then respond accordingly. Next slide. This is a slide. I'm not going to go over this in great detail. We probably know a lot of the precautions and symptoms, but we just tell students, be vigilant, pay attention to their health. We got some links. We share these slides with our students as well, so they can explore for further details. Some other, just questions. I've sort of touched on these a little bit, but just to reiterate, at the program level or the provider level, some questions to ask would be, what are the policies or protocols to participate on that program as they relate to COVID? And then, responding accordingly. Along with that, what impact might vaccination status, including a booster, have on your participation? It'd also be good to know what the refund policy is, both before and also during the program. So if you were to, maybe you were to test positive for COVID the day before the program, could you be refunded any of the money? Or if you're backed out of the program a week before the program, what would that look like? Or during the program? So just good to know what the refund policies are. And then financial policies as well. So if you were to, academic policies as well. If you were to, if the program were to move to maybe a remote learning situation after the term begins, we don't foresee that happening, but it did happen a few years ago. So it's good information to know. Location questions, again, what are the entry requirements for that country that you're going to, or countries in some cases? And that could be vaccination, it could be a test, et cetera. Also, are there tests readily available in the program location? And if so, where? And then this third question under this section, what happens if you leave the country for a weekend and try to re-enter? So this is a pretty, traditionally, this is a fairly common practice amongst a lot of students who study abroad. They go somewhere, especially if they go to somewhere like Europe, where there's a lot of countries within a relatively, short distance. While they're have a free weekend, they might go to a nearby country to explore the sites there. Pretty common. And that's still fine, but we just want students to be aware, if you do leave and you try to re-enter that country, are there any kind of COVID related requirements that you'd have to meet? It used to be a little easier to cross the borders back and forth like that. But just want students very, very clear about what the requirements are. And then travel questions, what is the airline's flight refund or flight change policy? As you're buying your flight, if there's a chance for you to buy that flight insurance, it might be something to consider in case you have to cancel or delay your flight for some reason. Or is there any other additional insurance that might be need to be purchased to protect the cost of your you've been paying out? All right, so moving on from COVID to the next situation. Obviously, the Russia-Ukraine situation is also ongoing and has been since last February. Thus far, we've not had a direct impact on any UA students or programs at this time. There was a possible impact over the winter regarding maybe some heat and gas energy usage, but that really didn't have too much of an impact. And obviously, we're heading into summer now, so we don't foresee that being a problem over the summer as well. But we are continuing to monitor the situation. And if the situation were to spill over and begin to impact other parts of Europe, then we, of course, would respond accordingly. The two big pieces of advice we're giving to students right now, of course, would be, one, do not travel to Russia or Ukraine. It's not a good time to be there. Secondly, we also are recommending to avoid travel to countries that border Russia and Ukraine. And again, that's just because if the situation were to escalate and to spill over outside of Ukraine, then those countries nearby would be, of course, the ones most likely impacted. So it'd be best to avoid those areas. We're looking at, again, we're monitoring the situation, but some sources we look at: Department of State, International SOS. These are also sources that you and your student have access to as well. So next slide. All right, so I've referenced International SOS a lot already, and so I'm kind of going deeper into International SOS now. So they are UA's international travel assistance partner, and they provide a lot of resources and a lot of things that we think are really useful in terms of preparing students and helping them stay safe. So number one, before their travel, in the weeks before their travel, they should be getting a pre-trip email from International SOS about their travel and about their destination, kind of with some details about the situation in their country that they're going to. That could be information related to medical, could be security, could be a variety of other things. They also can issue out location-based alerts based on a student's itinerary and travel situation. So if there's something that happens in London, for example, then International SOS can push out an alert. Okay, everybody in London, here's this thing that's going on, kind of, in real time right away. So that's a great resource. There is that check-in function. I referenced this earlier when I was talking about the crisis response communication protocol. We can here at UA can send out messages through the app, and students can check in. This, of course, again, reiterates the importance of downloading the app. Please make sure your students done that, because it can come in really useful. There's their website. All right, the international insurance, International SOS also facilitates our international insurance. And so just a few highlights. First of all, this is insurance really designed for international travel, designed for study abroad travel. It is good insurance for your student. So a few highlights: covers up to $250,000 per accident or sickness. So if a student were to experience multiple issues while abroad, maybe one week they get sick, have to go to a doctor. Next week, maybe they sprain their ankle, have to go to a doctor. It would cover up to $250,000 per accident or per sickness. So it's not a cumulative thing; it restarts every time. Second point there is $0 deductible. So what this means is ultimately, the out-of-pocket cost for going to seek medical assistance would be $0. Now that it might mean that can work two ways. So number one, if it's a non-super emergency situation, you have a little bit of time, you can call ahead. Call International SOS, let them know, this is the issue you're experiencing. You're sick, you need to see a doctor, for example. International SOS can then refer the student to the nearest medical facility, somebody they probably worked with before, that provides good care. And they also can arrange direct billing between the insurance and that hospital or that medical facility, such that the student would not see a bill. That's sort of the ideal situation, if you can call ahead and arrange that beforehand. The second way, of course, sometimes you just have to get to the hospital or you just have to get to the doctor. You can't worry about calling International SOS, and that's fine. If you're in that situation, you have to pay the bill. If you see a bill and you have to pay that bill out of pocket, just keep a copy of all the receipts, all the documentation, and then we can work with the student to be reimbursed from insurance for that expense. But ultimately, the out-of-pocket cost should be $0. Another big highlight is this emergency or security evacuation. That could be a major expense if it were required, but it could be 100% covered by insurance. It also includes good mental health coverage, and that includes could be done online, or it could be done with an in-person counselor there on the ground where the student is. So that's another big highlight. There are some exclusions. You'll see the list there. So if the student's injured doing some of these things, skydiving, bungee jumping, etc., then it's possible insurance might not cover the cost of those injuries. Another exclusion that's not included on this list, but just something to mention, is it also doesn't include routine or preventative care. So for example, we had a student who decided to go see the dentist to have a dental checkup one time recently. And, the insurance wouldn't cover that because it was a routine checkup. So the insurance doesn't cover routine checkups, but it does cover if she was having issue with her mouth or she had toothache, then it would have covered, but not just a regular dental checkup or other kind of checkup. Your students at pre-departure, they received all the information about insurance regarding the policy numbers, things of that nature. It's also here on the screen, of course. And there's the number. And again, you can call via the app as well. All right, just a few more things about the insurance. So some people ask, why do I need this insurance? We're already covered under the US-based insurance we have. And so there's a few reasons for that. So number one, again, we have this standard policy across the board for all of our UA travelers, all UA students, faculty, and staff going abroad for UA purpose, are all covered under the same policy. So that allows us to know exactly what is covered for everybody. Instead of trying to navigate, 2,000 different travelers' insurance policies, we just know there's this one policy, that can cover them. And it's the same for everyone. Secondly, again, this insurance really is designed for international travel. So some of the inclusions and some of the coverage amounts are going to be a lot better than probably most of the US-based insurance people have. So I talked about emergency evacuation as one of those. On down the slide here, the medical or union coverage, that's another kind of special inclusion that our insurance includes. What that means is if a student were to experience an issue while they're abroad and they're going to be in a hospital for an extended period of time, then our insurance could fly a family member to be over there and be with them during that time while they're in the hospital. And it could cover the cost of the flight and their accommodations while they are there in support of the student, which could be, of course, really helpful. This does bring up the point, of course, that somebody in the family needs to have a valid active passport so that you can get to your student quickly if you need to. We did have this used in the last year. We had a student who had an appendectomy and had some complications from that and ended up having to be in the hospital for over a week, but the insurance flew their mom over to be with them for that week while they were recovering from that. And so hopefully it won't be needed, but it is good to have if so. Again, I've talked about the mental health coverage as well, and includes some other coverages as well. So again, kind of specially designed for international travel. If you want all the details about international SOS and the coverages it offers, then they are available in the Study Abroad application. All right, a few more things. Managing health. We tell students regarding medication, if they are taking medication or prescribed medication regularly that would kind of cover them through their study abroad period as well, then they should continue to take that medication. Don't take a break from taking the medication just because they're going to be abroad, but continue to take it as prescribed. But they do have to be mindful, of certain host country specific laws. To that end, we tell them to keep their prescriptions in the original containers and also take a copy of the doctor's prescription for that medication so they can prove to any authority that, yes, I'm supposed to take this medication as prescribed by my doctor. We do say, tell students to, if at all possible, get an ample supply that would cover, the duration of their study abroad program and use their US-based insurance here to get those medications before they go abroad. Immunizations. So beyond COVID, there's a variety of other immunizations that might be recommended or required for certain destinations. The CDC is kind of the go-to resource to figure out what those immunizations might be. Our Student Health Center here on campus, they have a travel clinic. They can arrange those immunizations if needed. Obviously, we're very late in the semester here on campus, but it might still be possible, or maybe it's something they need to arrange and kind of in their hometown or something like that before they go abroad. But it is another thing to be keeping in mind regarding potential immunizations. And I just mentioned the CDC. So that, again, is one website. This top left image is the CDC website. Every country in the world has a page on the CDC website. And if you kind of wanted to know what the recommendations are for immunizations, then you could go to the drop-down menu, select the country, and then it would give you any immunizations that might be needed. Same for the State Department. So travel.state.gov. Every country in the world has a page on that website as well. And I do recommend students take some time to read through what is being said on those websites. Again, it'll cover medical, security, kind of other situations that might be good to know in terms of the preparation and research portion of the program. And then the STEP program. So I've touched on this a few times, but STEP stands for Smart Travelers Enrollment Program. And this is a State Department program that notifies the nearest U.S. embassy of a person's location. You know, the STEP requires you to enter your information, your contact information, your travel dates, your travel locations, and then it notifies the nearest U.S. embassy of your presence there. And then if there's any kind of situations that happen that might impact U.S. citizens, then they push out information to the people on that STEP list. UA faculty-led programs, if your student's going on one of those programs, they are automatically registered in STEP. If your student's going on an affiliate or exchange or non-affiliate program, then they'd have to register themselves in STEP. So it's their decision, but it is recommended. One way STEP came in handy in recent years was during the initial stages of COVID. We had a lot of students who were abroad. We had a lot of students who were stuck abroad because borders closed quickly, flights were canceled with little to no notice. But the U.S. Embassy, a variety of U.S. embassies around the world arranged charter flights for U.S. students, U.S. citizens, excuse me, out of those countries. And if you're registered in STEP, then you're getting those notifications from the embassy. Hey, and there's gonna be a flight, you know, out of this airport at this time tomorrow. You know, make sure you're there and kind of give you all the details. So that's just one example of when STEP came in handy. So it is something that's recommended for our non-faculty-led program students. But for faculty-led program students, they will be in STEP automatically. All right, so we're getting near the end of the health and safety portion, but just a few things to mention. So the Student Code of Conduct here at UA, it does apply while a student is abroad as a UA student as well. So if we do hear about something that is happening that's impacting student that a student has done that might violate the Code of Conduct, then we can follow up accordingly, and the Student Conduct Office here at UA can follow up accordingly. That can include including dismissal from the program if it's a UA faculty-led program or other program if the conduct violation is severe enough. So we do tell students, you know, obviously be on your best behavior as you would here on campus at UA. The Personal Emergency Action Plan, again, I talked about that earlier a little bit. It's in the handbook on page 51 and 52. So we tell students, spend some time before you go abroad, figuring out those numbers, you know, what's the 911 equivalent, what's the police station, what's the hospital number, where's the nearest U.S. embassy, all those details, as well as some other questions to think through to help them be prepared in case of an emergency, so that in a, you know, kind of a stressful situation, they don't have to stress about finding those details. They can just turn that page. Maybe they've taken a picture of that page and put it on their phone. They can refer to it there. So, you know, planning ahead is always the best course of action. And then travel tips. So during our pre-departure orientation, we showed them the short video. Somebody who's talking about different travel tips. Some of those are for safety. Some of those are kind of protect your belongings from theft and things like that. If you go to the next slide, I'll kind of summarize a lot of the tips that she covers in that video. But sort of the, you know, the big tip that she talks about in that video, there's one thing she says, you know, the golden rule of travel is do as the locals do. And so that does cover a lot of things really, but it's the basic idea there, number one, of trying not to stand out, trying to blend in, trying not to draw attention to yourself. Obviously, to not make yourself a potential, you know, mark or victim of some kind of crime. This could include also not getting out large sums of cash in public unless you absolutely have to. Being careful about giving out your personal information, whether it's your hotel, your number, your phone number, et cetera, to strangers. Keeping your food and drink in sight when you're out and socializing. Really, these tips should be hopefully adhered to here in Tuscaloosa or here in the US as much as anywhere. But certainly while you're abroad, then students should do this there as well. Carrying cash in more than one pocket, maybe, you know, use a money belt. in case some money does get stolen, you still have other sources you can get to. We tell students to not go out alone. Please do not go out alone. We say groups of 3 at least. Number one, if something were to happen to some student, then somebody can stay with them while the other person runs and gets help. So we say groups of 3 for that reason at least. And then I talked a little bit about these last 2, but knowing the local emergency numbers in that location, and then contacting international SOS or us for assistance in a emergency situation. And that concludes the health and safety portion. I'm going to be sticking around to answer any questions, but I think I'm going to turn it back over now to Carolina to talk about academics and registration.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Chad. I am here to specifically talk about academics. This is kind of a really important point. Chad had previously mentioned about program types. And so we want to make sure that the parents are aware of how grades come in. We also mentioned this in every application. We actually, any study abroad application that a student does, we actually quiz them. They have an assessment, and we ask them about this particular question. So everybody is clear of how grades kind of come back in for a study abroad program. So a student can actually study abroad and go through a provider, something like CIS Abroad, one parent mentioned, or AIFS or CEA, CIEE. There's all of these acronyms, and actually sit in a foreign institution, right, and get their grades back on a domestic or American transcript. It is just based on the policy of that particular provider. We tell every student that it is up to them to ask the provider how their transcript will come back. If the transcript comes back on an American transcript, those grades will look like A, B, C, D, E, or A, B, C, D, F. And those transfer grades will come back as actual letter grades and will be calculated into a student's GPA here at the University of Alabama. If a student goes abroad, and so let me just mention, if a student is going on a UA faculty-led program, where they're registered in a UA course, that is a domestic American transcript. That's just a normal UA course, okay? If a student is going on a program where they are either doing an exchange or direct enroll, and they are going to receive their grades on an international transcript, it's a very difficult job to find equivalencies of A's and B's and C's, because the US grading system might be A through F, Japan might be 1 through 10, in Australia it's high distinction, and then 6 others. Belgium might be 1 through 6. And so what university's UA's policy is that as long as that student has met the requirement at that institution to pass the class, then that transfer credit will come back to the University of Alabama as pass or fail, okay? If students pass those classes abroad, the passing grades are not calculated into UA's GPA. But if the students fail their courses abroad, that 0 for that credit, that non-credit comes back, does affect their GPA negatively. So I'm going to kind of mention this again so that we understand the different types of programs and how academics is determined or influenced by program types. So starting with the top left, if a UA student is going on a faculty-led program, they're just going to register as normal and earn UA credit and grades as normal. Okay, most of our students in the summer are doing a UA faculty-led program. For students who are going abroad for the spring or the fall on an exchange program, then they would know, because we've been pounding that name exchange over and over, which means a UA student is going abroad, and then that student from that institution is coming and kind of replacing, they're exchanging spots. that grade, because it's going to come back on an international transcript, will come back to the University of Alabama as pass fail. Again, passing does not impact their GPA. Fail class does impact their GPA. So somebody had asked what the relationship of a provider is. So they're kind of included in this bottom left picture. We have the University of Alabama, who is sending students to a provider, who is then sending students to an institution or a program. It is a one direction arrow. We are not bringing back international students like an exchange program. For affiliate or non-affiliate or any program that's kind of considered a provider program, it is dependent on the student to ask that provider how the grades will come back. If it comes back on a domestic transcript, it's going to be letter grades. If it's going to come back as international transcript, it's going to be pass fail. Sometimes affiliates like to send both the international transcript and then their domestic transcript. So for instance, as an example, we have some students who are going on a CIEE program to Carlos III in Spain, when students are actually sitting in Carlos III University, and it's a CIEE program. Well, CIEE may send Carlos III transcript, but those CIE programs also get transcribed by an institution in Connecticut. They will send the domestic one as well. And the domestic transcript will always trump the international transcript. And lastly, we have students who do a direct enroll. This is UA students going directly into an international institution. Again, there is no arrow coming back to the University of Alabama. Those are going to be pass-fail transfer credit. Okay, so really for the provider programs, I'm going to mention it for the third time. Tell the students or your student to ask how your transcript will come back, whether it's domestic or international transcript. So we have been maybe hounding is a nice word, but drilling these particular dates to your students, the importance of registration and kind of payment dates. So every student, regardless if they're going on a faculty-led program or not, they're going to be registered in a course, and that's how we bill the international insurance. So with the faculty-led course, it's going to be, psychology this, or theater this, or Spanish this. But if it's a provider program, it's going to be a CIP. That's what they register for, Capstone International Program, and it's probably a 413 or a 513. Okay, so every student has to be registered in a course. Course registration started on March 27th. So over a month ago, and if students aren't registered, that is a question you need to ask. We actually do have some students who still aren't registered, and so we're hounding them. Number one, make sure that your child is registered. There were some dates that happened in April when when things were determined for scholarships. So the University of Alabama Scholarship Office, those are scholarships like the Merit Scholarship, Capstone, the tuition scholarships, National Merit, those kinds of things. They had particular dates in April that they wanted students to be registered for, students to request a form for, and they wanted to see registration of the students before they place scholarships on their accounts. One big date that's coming is May 10th. So another question to ask your student, besides the first one, is if they've registered. Number two is if they have confirmed their bill, which means the student's bill is due May 10th at noon. Everything needs to be paid off on the student bill. Some of our students who've paid a study abroad program, like a faculty-led program, let's just say you were going to UA in Italy Language and Culture. I know that program is a $4,000, and we've been paying, parents have been paying our students since December and making payments January, February, March. Student might have paid a $4,000 bill and you think that you're done. Well, a student might have a $25 parking fee. That parking fee is attached to their student bill. And if they don't have that parking fee billed, paid for, and the balance kind of at zero, then May 10th at 1 p.m., their schedule will be dropped and money is refunded, and it becomes this big deal. So registration, ask your student if they're registered. And number two, make sure that those bills are paid by May 10th. Students are getting emails from student accounts. They're being told by the faculty that we meet with, the faculty are sending messages. And then we're going to, starting tomorrow, starting a daily campaign to remind students, hey, May 10th is coming, pay your bill. Because we can't see money, but we can tell if students are confirmed or not. If a student has questions about their student bill, ask directly to student accounts. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, they keep student financial information very segregated from the rest of campus. So most people outside of student accounts can't see a student's bill. So the student account office, and maybe if Sarah or Chad, if you guys can go ahead and put their phone number and email into the chat, that would be the best person to call when it relates to that. Some students are going abroad I see a question that said lead abroad. Some students, if they're taking academic credit through lead abroad, yes, they're going to be registered in a CIP course. Some students who are doing kind of a non-credit course, non-credit opportunity, I think most are maybe doing credit, I don't know, Sarah, might be build that international insurance another way. Okay. All right, so planning and logistics. One of the things that we hope your students have done by now is that they have their passports in hand and ready to go. We have had, well, not we, basically the entire United States has had issues and delays with passports. Actually, we had somebody who just got their passport today, but they had to go through Senator Britt's office to kind of expedite it because it was really quite delayed. So hopefully your students have had passports. Their passports should be valid for up to 3 to 6 months past their arrival date. So that's something to consider, that they're not their passport isn't expiring soon. Some students might be needing a visa or a permit. Those are normally students who are going abroad for longer than 90 days. So most of our fall semester kiddos have needed a visa. We hold a visa workshop. We've held a visa workshop every single Wednesday this month to help students work through visas. But also you need a visa to just maybe enter Ghana or enter India for the first time. And so if they're on a faculty-led program, the faculty were helping students with kind of that visa. But sometimes for those visas, you might need an enrollment letter or proof of health insurance. Those are things that we could help you with. And we could help with also the foreign admissions letter. But this is stuff that our office has been already working with your student. But for those parents who have students who are leaving in the fall, sometimes it's good to start asking about visas, because you can't really start usually working on a visa until 3 months prior to entry into that country. So this really pertains to a lot of the fall kids. So be asking these particular questions. Don't procrastinate. Time is really sensitive when it comes to visas or passports. We talk to your students about finances a lot. This is also another weekly workshop that we hold. We have a visa workshop. We have a visa about workshop about courses every Wednesday, and then we have a money matters. So scholarships, sometimes scholarships are dispersed a few days prior to the start of a UA term, which sometimes doesn't equate to the term that our students are going abroad. But again, this is something that you can work with student accounts. We tell your students to create a budget, and we talk to them about conversion rates, especially right now in Europe. Last year we were, it was beautiful. The US dollar was stronger than the euro, and now we're back up with the US dollar is a little bit weaker than the euro. We tell students about carrying cash. Right here, maybe we're very much a card society, but in other countries, maybe cash is king. So understanding to understanding having cash, and how to keep cash secure. We tell students about all kind of apps like Venmo, PayPal, Split, Mint. These are just apps that people use when they're going abroad. We also talk about coins. Sometimes you don't, necessarily walk around with change here in the US as much as we used to, but sometimes you need coins to either get some water in Europe or to use the bathroom. So that's kind of something that we talk about. And then we tell students to notify their banks that they are actually going to go abroad, making sure that they have all of the information that's needed with their PIN numbers for their credit cards. We tell students to take a picture front and back of their credit card. So if a card is lost or stolen, they would know the number on the back of the card and how to get it replaced or get it turned off. We remind students about foreign transaction fees and ATM transaction fees, because sometimes they don't, foreign transaction fees is just not something that we deal with here in the US, but it is possible if you have an American credit card or debit card. We talk about how some countries don't really require tips and some countries aren't as how we do in America, where 10 people can come to a table and everybody has, 10 separate receipts. Sometimes in Europe, if there's 10 people at the table, one person is paying for the whole. They're not going to split up the receipts. And so, using things like Venmo or PayPal to pay others and really kind of doing their own research is part of, us equipping them so that they can be proactive and do some research about what's the expectation in their particular country. So some things that we kind of touch on about culture, as I mentioned, culture shock is real, and it's going to be something that will happen. And it may be that a student or your student goes through it very quickly in the first week, or some student is going to spend 4 weeks being on a certain, section of culture shocks. But it's important to know that a lot of them are really excited about traveling abroad, and they have this almost kind of fantasy about what this will look like, but it is still stressful. They're going to get on the plane, that plane door closes, and all of a sudden we're on a 10-hour trip or a 12-hour flight, and they're doing it alone, and it is a quite scary thing, and sometimes uncomfortable. And so I every time I've been to 30 different countries, and every time I get on the plane, I'm like, where am I going? Why did I sign up for this? What am I doing? It causes kind of some fear and anxiety in myself. But when students arrive and they've been planning this for an entire year, and they get to a particular country, they're in this honeymoon phase where everything is really exciting, right? They're looking at things, everything is new, things look different, and they taste different, they smell different. And sometimes that honeymoon phase does wear off. And you usually find that because, maybe they're not sleeping well, the location that they have, AC is not as strong as their AC at home, maybe their milk is not refrigerated, or they don't like their roommate, or they're really frustrated about, having to take public transportation when they're used to driving cars all the time. So sometimes that honeymoon phase goes to hostility phase. And, they're really trying to just find, they're really kind of heavily picking up on the differences that exist in that particular country. And sometimes, well, hopefully the hostility phase does kind of tend to fade away, and in comes the humor phase, where they start looking at themselves saying, well, maybe I was being too critical, or maybe I was being unflexible, and kind of laughing about things, or maybe saying like, wow, I really do appreciate the trains and the public transportation. And maybe in the US, we have these massive cars that are gas guzzlers. Maybe here in Norway, they are doing it better. So there's some really kind of interesting kind of maybe smoothing out of the cultural differences and looking at the things that they're learning from that particular culture. And then usually it's time to come home. You might also see that phase happen again, where now they're home and they're doing kind of reverse culture shock. So we talk to students, and we talk to faculty a lot about, stress and what stress looks like abroad, and having healthy routines and figuring out how to manage stress abroad and how do students manage stress here. Is it yoga classes? Is it running? Is it eating healthy foods? Is it making sure they have good night's sleep? All of those things need to happen abroad, right? Students also are going to be exercising more because they're not going to have vehicles. So they might be not used to this, 15,000 step days. They've got to take care of their feet, or some students might be in a culture where it has a lot more fiber in it. They have more beans that they're normally used to. They might have tummy issues. Like, these are all things that they need to pay attention to that will help them with the transition. We also tell them it's really important to meet new people. We encourage them to use a buddy system, to never go out alone, to always be with other University of Alabama students or their students in their particular program. But journal and diary and blogging and talking about your experience is really important and helps people get through the culture shock. We also talk about the behavioral and cultural expectations abroad. If you've ever been to our campus, you would notice that the young lady in the blue, that's kind of the University of Alabama uniform, right? It is very normal to see students walking around with a big old t-shirt in the summer and shorts that are there, but sometimes they don't look like they're there, and flip-flops. And that's kind of the norm here, but it might not be the cultural or behavioral expectation in that country. So understanding what to pack and how to, as Chad mentioned before, make sure that you blend in and do as the locals do. We talk about, and we show them this particular picture. Chad, I think, had taken this picture on his entry to Taiwan that said, drug trafficking is punishable by death in the ROC. And, while we're expecting that your students are not bringing in drugs, that is the expectation in the law in that particular country. So maybe it's very important to make sure that I would have my eyes on my luggage and making sure that no one is around my luggage that I don't particularly know. We talk a lot about alcohol and how, obviously in the US, for students in most universities, the alcohol culture is a little bit more of a binge culture, very social, go out and, kind of overindulge. Where in Europe, it is very much something that exists normally, that you might even go to a university and wine is being offered at the cafeteria right next to the soda and the water. And so understanding the different alcohol levels, the expectations around the cultural sense of what beer and wine kind of, and how it's looked at in that particular country is stuff that we talk about and make sure to have those conversations with your students. Understanding too that if there's ever if overindulgence becomes a problem, they're still under the Student Code of Conduct at the University of Alabama, which means that we could come in and take action if a student is being disruptive on a particular program with things like that. Okay, one kind of last slide before we open it up for questions, and I'll try to look through the chat to make sure all the questions are there, is to follow us on social media. We are Bama Study Abroad at any of one of these platforms. We, I think, we'll have 2 students doing Instagram takeovers all summer, so maybe you'll see your student there. We'd love to see pictures. We're really excited about our students who are going abroad. We've got a little over 1,000 students departing for the summer. And of those 1,000 students, we've got 700 of them going on University of Alabama faculty-led programs. So we have 45 different programs that we're managing internally to, I think, almost 30 different countries there. So lots of great things to see and do. So I will welcome anybody. This is the time if you have any questions. Welcome anybody to pop a question in the chat if you'd like, or unmute yourself and ask a question. Okay, so the question was, would I provide some information on the students visiting other countries? Yes. Really, students have the ability to visit students in other countries as long as, number one, they don't have anything academically planned as a part of that particular experience. So for instance, I know our University of Oxford program are there for 4 weeks, but 2 weekends students have free. And so students can absolutely leave Oxford and go and visit a friend in another location, whether it's in the UK or in another country. But all of that is handled internally with the program provider, and the program provider is aware and knows where the student is particularly going.
Carolina, I'll take a question or two here in the chat if you want.
Go ahead.
So there's a question, are the students already aware of how they are getting from the airport to the dorms? So it definitely depends on the program. A lot of our programs, I say our programs, a lot of study abroad programs, that includes our faculty lab, but also includes maybe affiliate or exchange. A lot of them will offer some kind of airport shuttle or airport pickup, telling students arrive on this day during this window of time, and they will have someone there to meet them and take them where they need to be. But we always tell students, if that's offered, certainly they should take them up on that offer. That would save a piece of stress, in that initial phase of entering the country, but also to prepare a backup plan of how they could get to the airport, to their accommodations if their flight gets in late, or if their ride for, picking them up is not able to make it. So they have that backup plan. So to answer that question, it's quite likely that the student is aware or has been informed about the airport pickup. It just varies on the program.
Yeah, and as long as, probably anybody who's departing in May probably knows, but maybe their programs in July or August do not. We have a question that says, one of my worries, I wanted to mention, you're not required to stay for the questions. So all of this, again, will be recorded and sent. So we'll make sure that we record the question portion if you need to jump off. One of my worries is pickpockets and kids losing wallets and or passports. Any tips around this? Absolutely. We talk to students about this. One big tip is that each program and each country is a little bit different about walking around with your American passport. I know in Ireland, it is something that the faculty member really stresses and says, do not bring your passport with you. Leave it in your suitcase, lock up your suitcase, because that is really kind of a valuable thing. Pickpockets, as Chad mentioned, put different types of cash in different parts of your body. Our students in America are used to backpacks on the back, which is not really a safety thing, a safe way of transporting important things, especially in a bus or a train, because people can get into it. So we recommend maybe straps of keeping their bags in front of them, not having purses that are open, actually zipping things up. And so we talk to students about that, but it's kind of the same basic tips that we would expect a student to have in New Orleans or DC or kind of larger city with public transportation. They should also do that. We should, and your students should have sent us a copy of their passport and their application. And so every faculty member at least has a copy of that. So if a student loses it, we can get a physical, a copy of it, and that can help maybe fast forward the process, expedite the process when they have to get a passport abroad in that particular embassy. Let's see. How many days before? Oh yeah, go ahead, Chad.
I'm sorry, I saw one of the next questions about vaccines. So that will really vary based on location and based on the vaccine required or recommended. Some vaccines are multiple dose vaccines, require a week or a month in between doses in some cases. The yellow fever vaccine in particular, I think, is a single dose vaccine recommended 10 days prior to travel for that specific one. But again, every vaccine has a different time frame for that.
I just recently took the yellow fever vaccine. I know that they do have it in the University of Alabama Medical Center, but she's only open on Thursdays, at least the travel clinic. So that's something to consider. Yellow fever vaccine isn't something that's kind of widely available. So make sure you call your like local health center, public health center as well. There's a question about how many days before the start of the class should they arrive. This is something that they would probably either ask their provider or ask their faculty-led director. Their faculty-led director has probably already told them, we need you to arrive on this particular day. Let's see. How are host families vetted? That's a great question. So we work with our institutions abroad to do the host family vetting. Host families are where students are living with a home family, and this is done mostly in our language program. So I know we have homestays in Italy, we have homestays in Colombia, and all of that are vetted through those institutions on the ground. And they tend to be the same host parents and host families that our programs have seen on multiple years. And so if you have something specific that you want me to ask about your particular program, if it was one that I didn't mention, please feel free to shoot us an email or put your email here and I can get you directly to that particular program. Is room and board meals included? He's going to Spain. Neil, unfortunately, I don't know which program your child is on, but if you could be more specific or maybe send Sarah Kidwell on here a message about your student in CWID, he could tell you particularly about if meals included. I would say most meals are not included. Because we just can't gather all of these meals and expect the students eat the same amount. And secondly, meals are a very cultural thing. Meals are where students can go out and traverse through the city and, you know, have these really great interactions with locals and try new things. And so normally meals are something that aren't always included. They will have like a welcome meal or a closing meal, or meals if they do a site visit to a company, maybe they'll have a shared meal there, but mostly meals aren't included. There's a question about clothing, our expectations for classes. Daughter's going to Spain on both summer programs. So I'm sure that's a UA in Spain study abroad program. I would ask Jose Cano and ask that particular question to the director. Our students go to the University of Nebrija in Spain, and I would say the Spanish are very much more conservative than I would say Americans are in terms of how our students would dress on campus. So I wouldn't say formal, but, you know, clothes that you can see, you know. We wouldn't have the big t-shirts that are hanging over shorts and then, you know, you can't see whether a student has bottoms or not. I do know that flip-flops is something that's probably very common here on college campuses, but isn't necessarily so much common as walking shoes around Europe because, you know, those streets have been there for years. It's cobblestone streets. And so you really do need something that is secure on people's feet. If the student is buying their airline ticket themselves, suggestions about when to buy. I would start looking at that pretty frequently now, I think. So here are my personal travel tips when it comes to flights. Number one, I would look at flights on a private browser because sometimes browsers like to collect information. And so once you keep on looking for a flight, they notice that you're looking for that flight and, you know, they might jack the price up. I always, me personally, go directly with a flight and book it directly from the airline because sometimes if there is a change and if I bought it through Expedia, but it's a Delta ticket, Delta made the change, sometimes Expedia can be a little delayed or late, and that's just my personal preference. There's also a website that our students have used called Student Universe, and I don't know if Sarah, if you can throw that website up there. Student Universe is the company that we have worked with in the past for our group travel, and they offer kind of pretty good rates on flights. They negotiate with a lot of the large aircraft carriers to have a very small slice of those tickets for students between the ages of like 18 to 22. So, you know, that would be a suggestion. I wouldn't suggest buying an international ticket within 30 days. I would say it needs to be at least longer, more in advance of 30 days. Maria Myers asked, when do we know when and where the student will find housing for the program? Again, I don't know in particular about your program, so if you can maybe provide a little bit of information with Sarah as a direct message, we can kind of help provide some information about that. Yes, so my daughter's traveling to Columbia. That's great. Tammy, I'm also from Columbia. I was on that program last year with the students. So several illnesses are contracted through mosquitoes. So mosquito prevention is required, and at least DEET of 30% and above is what we kind of recommend. There isn't any kind of restrictions on bug sprays, but what I would just be mindful of is that you probably want to take things that are pump or cream versus aerosols, because aerosols, you know, tend not to do very well on a plane. Things can also be purchased there as well.
I saw a couple of questions about computers. Are they required on the program? Really, you'll just have to ask if it's a faculty-led program, you know, ask the faculty director, the instructor, the teacher for that class, for that program. They will be the one to answer that question, really. Most students do take computers, but you'd want to confirm with the faculty member if it's required.
Yeah, Mike's time. I mean, that program is also a lot of doing underwater research. And so I'm not so sure if, you know, that is as much as the necessity. Dana asked, my daughter's taking the psychology class in London. Do students do meals and activities together? Yes, they have a very packed schedule. That one's one of my favorite, I think, programs out there because they do so much. But then students will have time to individually do things, or they might have time to say, okay, you know, dinner's on your own, and then they decide to get together and go to dinners in packs. So that will happen. Skelton asked, when are students going to contact their host families? Again, I'm not so particularly sure which particular study abroad program that they're doing. So I don't know exactly the time, but if they're doing a program with a host family, the person who would know that is the faculty-led director. So, you know, the Columbia program will be Dr. Bill Warden. It would be just a quick email from your student to the faculty-led director who would have specific detail. Jennifer asks, Jennifer Balcock, I don't have details on housing. Should I assume my daughter will have bedding in our housing? Yes. It's not usually expected that our students are coming down with bedding. That's usually taken care of. All right, our daughter is going for 3 weeks. Any suggestion on how much cash to pack? What's your best recommendation for this? This can vary. Number one, where the student is going, right? Columbia versus Europe. In Columbia, the dollar is so strong. They will get a really nice meal for the equivalent of $5 US. But in Europe, it might be something different. So I would kind of try to estimate what your students are kind of using here. And remember that your students aren't probably going to have the opportunity to like cook at home unless they are in a location that's going to provide them to cook. You know, they may also be buying, like, not every single meal will be out. They'll be eating out, but they might buy some groceries to make like a quick breakfast sandwich or things like that. So I don't have a really great answer. I know, like, my family's food budget for the month is anywhere between $600 to $1,000 in the US, and there's 3 of us. So, you know, that might be a good number, maybe 600, 500. It depends on the location as well. How many pieces of luggage do you recommend? As little as possible. I think Sarah mentioned that. Students overpack, and then they got to remember they got to drag these things everywhere through public transportation. So that's the number one thing that we hear from students. I wish I didn't pack so much. It didn't leave me enough space to bring back things. I had to lug my luggage here and there. I'm going to Belize, and now my luggage has to be on a boat. So, you know, pack for having to go somewhere and washing your clothes. You don't have to have a full month of clothes. Pack for 2 months and then wash your clothes. So there was a question for somebody who jumped here, who's taking notes. We have tons of German-speaking countries, tons of exchange programs, and a very active German program that wants to help students make really great decisions about where to go in Germany. We also have a German program in the Honors College. We also send the most Fulbrighters. These are students who graduate from the University of Alabama and go on a State Department Fulbright scholarship, and most of them go to Germany. So Germany is a very easy connection to have and to start kind of communicating with when you come to campus. So we can easily get that particular person set up either through an advising appointment this summer, and then maybe checking in with some faculty on campus, some German faculty on campus. Let's see. What are appropriate gifts? This is a great question. What are appropriate gifts for the host family? I wish I had it here, but I'm going to Ghana, and one of the things that I brought was like a folded blanket that says the University of Alabama. So think of gifts like something that is, one, can be easily packed and squished, so nothing glass, no plates, but really kind of unique things that tell the story of your hometown. We have a great soap company. We used to have a soap company in Tuscaloosa. I've heard of some families, students take like specific candied pecans or something from the state of Alabama or wherever you are. So, it doesn't have to be elaborate, but something just says, hey, thank you for letting me come into your home, but this little trinket is from my home. And so that might be a really good kind of family, host family thing. Let's see. Most economical and best way to communicate with your students. I would say if a student is there for a while and they have access to Wi-Fi, I would turn off the, international cell phone plan and let them communicate through WhatsApp. But, I have Verizon, and it's $10 a day until you reach that 10th day. And then it's just $100 a month if I want to pick up my phone and make physical kind of cell phone calls and have data. Sometimes data is important for students, but they can always download a map like a Google map and use it offline, and it still has the blue marker. It tells you where to go. So I would say something free like WhatsApp or, iMessage, something like that, if they want to turn their cellular service off, or just working with your cell phone provider to see what the max is for that particular month. What's the classroom dress code at Oxford? I actually was in the Oxford program a couple of years ago. Worcester is one of the most beautiful colleges that you'll find there at Oxford, and they are very proud of that institution, and it's pristine. The grounds are gorgeous. Actually, Worcester was the first picture that we took here. I would ask the Oxford professors on that, but I would say that I would probably say it's more of like a kind of a khakis and a t-shirt or khakis and polo kind of place, because it's just so historic, right? Oxford is very historic. Sarah, is that all of the questions?
There's one question about going to Thailand. Anything to prevent Bangkok belly or travelers' GI being upset? Some basic tips. I would say, probably not drinking out of the tap, drinking bottled water, or if you use the water out of the tap for some purpose, boil it. Regarding food, also, make your vegetables, wash and boil, peel. Some of those basic tips to try to prevent some of that issue would be some initial tips.
Yeah, I would add that be mindful of ice, right? Because ice might be not filtered. And as Chad mentioned, anything like a fresh salad, they might take a salad and wash the lettuce in unfiltered water or tap water. That's going to be problematic. So you want to eat things that are baked or boiled or cooked. You want to probably avoid street food. Obviously drink from bottled water. And, I have a tip where I put a bottle of water in my sink to make sure that when I brush my teeth, I'm brushing my teeth with this. And the hardest one for me to remember is to not open my mouth in the shower and like sing and get water in my mouth. So kind of being mindful about that. But I also, when I go to Thailand, I travel, with some Imodium because it might be a time where I'm just going to have an upset stomach just based off of, the fresh juices that I'm drinking. There's just a lot more fiber than I'm used to, so I would do all the tips and then some kind of preventative medicine as well.
I think that might be all.
Okay, wonderful. Well, guys, I really appreciate your time and your attention and these wonderful questions. As Sarah mentioned, we are going to make sure that this information is downloaded and it will be shared possibly tomorrow because it takes a while for all of this Zoom to be shared and then for it to be uploaded into YouTube. So keep an eye out for an email. Tell your students that we will be emailing them possibly tomorrow, and they're free to forward you this information so you can have it. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you and we appreciate your time. Thank y'all.
I'm going to stop the recording now.